Hi guys, well the heat is on for general elections. Hi everybody and welcome aboard to Local Matters. You know, November 6th is right around the corner and the stakes are high. You see, Republicans control the White House, the House, and the Senate. But according to political strategists, Democrats could take control of the House in November. And if this happens, the politics of Washington will dramatically change, at least for the next 2 years. So when we come back, we're going to be talking with a candidate who says if she's elected, she will be a representative of, by, and for the people of District 36. So when we come back, we're going to hear from her. You know why? If it's local, it matters.
Dance. Let me see you move.
Baby, love never felt so good. Can't die if it never could. Not like you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. You know, many political strategists believe that despite the Democrats' long odds to retake the U.S. Senate and House in November's elections, party strategists say the escalating legal troubles of President Donald Trump's former associates and corruption scandals engulfing Republicans could even boost Democrats' chances. Joining me to talk about her campaign against incumbent Randy Wood as Democratic candidate for House of Representatives District 36 is Miss Nikki Arnold Swindle. Welcome aboard to Local Matters. It's good to have you aboard.
Thank you, Dottie. It's good to be here.
You know what? This is an exciting time for many people, especially for women. It's such a historic wave right now taking place, not only here locally, but even around the country, where women are really finding themselves saying, I'm going to jump in. And here you are as well, running against Randy Wood. That's a pretty deep dive there. What inspired you?
Well, Dottie, I guess I've always had an interest in politics, mainly because I felt like people's voices should really matter. But looking at nationwide in our Congress, women make up, I would say, around 20% of the elected officials, and then on the state level it's even less. So
Right.
women make up 15% of our state legislators. And I felt like I had to do something, especially when it came down to the wire and nobody else had declared. And I feel like there should always be a choice on the ballot.
Yes, of course.
I think people should always have an opportunity to cast their vote, and it shouldn't just be for one person. They should have a choice to make.
Speaking of choices, we know that Randy Wood has been at this now for a long time here, District 36, at least 16 years or so.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned choice. What choices are you, if you are running, what choices do you see or do you feel that you're bringing to the people of District 36?
Right. Well, I actually have to be honest in that I voted for my opponent 16 years ago because I met him. I thought he was very pleasant, very personable. I don't feel like much has changed in 16 years.
16 years.
I feel like that our people are hurting, they're suffering, Alabama is broken, and it's time for a change. I think that it's probably good every so often to change our legislators, just as we should change other things in our lives.
Right,
So,
right.
And for me, I feel like I offer, for one, I'm the first person in my family to go to college. And I come from a working class family, my mother was raised in Blue Mountain, my grandmother was raised in Blue Mountain.
Okay.
She was orphaned at age 6 and then raised in Blue Mountain by a family there. And so I feel like I represent one of the people, and our voices aren't always being heard. We look at the elected officials and they don't always look like us.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I feel like I look like the people, but not only that, I want to hear what the people have to say. So I've already held 3 town halls in the district, and if elected, I plan to hold a town hall at least quarterly in the district so that I can hear what people have to say and
Right.
tell them why I voted the way that I did. And I just think that it's important that we allow ourselves to be held accountable to the people who elected us to represent them.
You mentioned people are hurting, and you're right. They're hurting in so many different capacities.
Yes, ma'am.
In your perspective, where are people hurting most?
Yes, ma'am.
Where?
Well, I'm a minister, and so I can't help but be slightly, a Christian minister, I can't help but be slightly biased by that, because I look out and I see people who don't have their educational needs met, people who don't have their health care needs met, people who, may be homeless or not have enough food to eat. I see that people need jobs. You know, one of the things that troubles me as a mom of children who are growing up is that they're going to probably have to leave the area so that they can find jobs where they can afford to raise their families.
Yes.
So I
yes.
think that we need to bring jobs back here, but it doesn't need to be just any job that would be actually sacrificing our environment or other things. I think it would be great if we had jobs that actually focused on sustainability and focused on maybe some green development. So.
Yes, that is so important. And you mentioned, so jobs are where people are really hurting too. Poverty is so high
Yes, ma'am.
in this area as well. Talk to me about some of the things you would do to really sort of eradicate that, if you could, in your time if you were elected.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I think that, so I really value and respect, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution, and I believe in people's freedom of religion. We do have a large majority Christian population here, and we're supposed to take care of people who are less fortunate than us. And so that doesn't mean a handout, it means a hand up.
Right.
And so I think that we need to help people. We need to make sure that people have opportunities, that there's equity. We need to make sure that people have health care, just basic needs like that. But we just have to take care. I think working class families particularly are not having their needs met, and Alabama is ignoring them because so many of our legislators come from either upper class or
Okay.
upper middle class, or they've worked themselves up there, and you know, some of them did grow up, but they've forgotten where they came from.
Okay.
And so that's part of the reason why it's important to change legislators every so often, because people forget where they came from, and then they forget who they work for.
Right, and so that people, you mentioned again, I want to just still I want to just really pay so much more close attention to, and that just really resonated with me. People hurting
Yes, ma'am.
with jobs. There's a lot of poverty in our area. When we come back, I want to really talk to more about, you mentioned people hurting and doing everything that you could and that you can to sort of eradicate many of these pains and woes,
Yes, ma'am.
particularly with jobs, with poverty, but I also want to talk more about education and about healthcare. So when we come back, we're going to continue talking with Miss Nikki Arnold Swindle. She is the Democratic candidate running for District 36. We'll be right back with more Local Matters. Hi, everybody, and welcome on back to Local Matters, where living local never felt so good. I'm Dottie Remsen, and I'm joined with Miss Nikki Arnold Swindle here on the set of Local Matters. She is running against incumbent Randy Wood for District 36. She's running as a Democratic candidate. And before we went to break, if you're just joining us, Nikki says she is running because she says, you know, it's just time for a change.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
know, and she realizes that she's up against Goliath, if you will, in a lot of ways, and she realizes that. But you also say time is time for a change in 16 years, and you also say people are hurting.
Yes, ma'am.
People are hurting. Before we went to break, we were talking about some of the many capacities where people are hurting. People are hurting when it comes to in poverty, with jobs. What about health care?
Right. Well, I think everything is linked back to healthcare. When I applied to go to graduate school in 2002, I wrote a paper on socioeconomic status as a factor in healthcare disparity, and it's actually the #1 factor because it leads to people not seeking preventative and primary care and actually seeking tertiary care instead. So they're going to emergency rooms to get their healthcare needs met, and that actually ends up costing us more as well.
Yes.
So, you know, we would actually save money by expanding Medicaid, and it would eventually even not only pay for itself, but be a money producer and an income generator, because it would create more jobs in healthcare, it would create more jobs in the industry. But more importantly, I think from my standpoint, is that it would provide for people to have basic preventative and primary care, and that's so important. And I think it's important that we remember that it's not just our physical health care, but mental health care.
Yes, which is so needed right now, Nikki. That
Right.
you know, that's a real big factor that's happening not only here locally, but really a global issue,
Yes,
where we
ma'am.
really are paying a lot of attention to what's going on with people mentally, with their mental health, and we really feel that you would really tackle that as well.
Yes, ma'am. I think that we have to expand Medicaid for that to happen. But we need to know that right now we don't have enough beds for people. And so what we're doing with people with mental health care issues, and really people who have been traumatized and who are coping with that trauma with substance misuse disorders and and other dangerous behaviors is they're getting incarcerated.
Yes.
So this would
Oh,
solve so
yes.
many problems that keep coming back to this, and then that also affects their employability.
Right,
So
because-
everything's
yeah.
linked.
Yeah, because then, if they've gone to jail, now they're not able to get to their jobs. They're not, they're going to be fired. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
mentioned expanding Medicaid. What about the lottery? Because a lot of people are saying, why are we still not there? Why are we
Right.
still not there? People are getting in their cars daily, driving over to Atlanta, playing the numbers. People, what would you do about that?
Well, I have to say, from 97 to 99, I was a lottery advocate, 100%. I'm at the point now where I feel like, as a minister, it kind of almost feels like a poor tax and a bad thing, but at the same
Yeah.
time, those people are still going to get in their cars and they're still going to drive across the state line to get tickets. They're just going to be paying for more gas to do it. So I think that the people deserve a vote again. I think that really the legislators, it's the responsibility of those who are sent to Montgomery to represent the people to give them the chance to vote on it and decide what they want to do. Now, it would bring in a lot of money that we're putting into other states, and
Yeah,
we've been
we're-
putting into other
Yeah,
states.
we're just walking over and putting that money in their hands. We might as well just walk over and go, here you go, Georgia.
Yes,
there you
ma'am.
go. Here you go.
So I think the people need a chance to vote on it, and hopefully passing something like that would allow us to do something that I feel we need to do, and I felt we need to do for 20 years, and that's to get rid of the sales tax on groceries, because
Okay, yes.
everybody needs a basic amount of food to survive, right? So that means that when we tax groceries, which we're one of only, I think, 4 states in the country that still taxes groceries 100%. There
Okay.
are other states that will tax certain things like sugars or
Right.
sodas or
Right.
things like that. But and we could even do that. That's fine. But we just need to get rid of the basic tax that's a regressive tax on groceries that people need to survive.
Yes.
So
Another area where you mentioned, again, this is all about, for you, it's time for a change.
yes, ma'am.
It's time for a change. You mentioned people are hurting. What about in areas of crime?
Right.
That is high.
Right.
That's high for us as well.
I haven't seen the statistics on how high crime is right now, but what I do see is that a lot of people are being incarcerated right now, and I really think that that links back into the things we talked about before. With, I think a lot of people have traumas, and the way that they're coping with those are in ways that's not healthy because they're not getting the mental health care needs met, and so then they're doing things that are hurting other people. And to me, brokenness in relationships is a sin. So, so we need to try to heal relationships. That's also why I don't run a very partisan campaign either, because it's not about that for me. It's about representing the people.
Right. It's about being there for the people.
Yes, ma'am.
You grew up here in the
Yes, ma'am.
area you mentioned, in the Blue Mountain area.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
when you go back over, sometimes drive back over and you take a look at it, how do you feel when you drive over and you kind of look at that area and see what it's become?
Well, I've been living back there for the past year, so so I get to see it on a regular basis. It's
Right.
way different now than it was, and I think that that just has a lot to do with people feeling maybe hopeless, and also there not being opportunities here. And so
Okay.
I think that it would be great for our state legislators to work along with our county commissioners and our city
Yes.
council and try to help revitalize the area. And I've gone to some city council meetings where I know that they're talking about that, things like that. And so I'm hopeful for that. But these people can't have hope unless we make sure that they have basic opportunities.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. You mentioned too that you would work even more closer if you were elected. You would work even closer with city council
Yes, ma'am.
commissioners to really make sure that. I mean, would you really put your all hands in and looking for, helping to look for opportunities for other businesses to come?
Right. Oh, I think we need to support small businesses. I absolutely do. And I think that we need to support small business development. You know, we have people right here who may be interested in starting businesses right now, but we
Yeah.
need to provide the opportunities to support that. And I also think that we just need to make sure that we keep a hand on the pulse of what's going on locally.
Yes.
And I think sometimes that when people go to Montgomery or they go to Washington or they go wherever, they lose track of that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we've got to go to break. I hear them in my ear. When we come back, we're going to be talking more with Nikki Arnold Swindle. She is running against State Representative Randy Wood, District 36. We're going to be talking more about her campaign. So we'll be right back. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Local Matters. We're living local, never felt so good. I'm Dottie Rimpsey, and I'm joined with Miss Nikki Arnold Swindle. She is the Democrat candidate running against Randy Wood, and for House District 36, and I should say State Representative Randy Wood of House District 36. And if you're just joining us, we've been talking about some of the issues that you would really tackle if you were elected. You mentioned very early at the top of the hour that people in our district are hurting. You're from this area, you love this area, you grew up in Blue Mountain, you mentioned, and to see some things that are happening in our community. You mentioned very early on in the show, it's time for a change.
Yes, ma'am.
And speaking of change, you know, we've got this trifecta going on here in the state of Alabama. And for those of you who are not familiar with that term trifecta, it's when one political party just really they control the majority in every house, the Congress, governorship, they control it. And you say it's time for a change.
Yes, ma'am.
Before we went to break, you mentioned some of the things you would really tackle, jobs, of course, being one, really working with City Council to bring jobs and working with commissioners to really bring jobs back to this area. But I don't know if we really, did we ever talk about education?
No, ma'am, we didn't. But that is really my number one issue, because I think that it's so important that we fully fund education at all levels. We have to fully fund public education and fully support public educators. My sister's a public educator. I was a substitute teacher for 3 years when I was in college at Jacksonville State. And so I just think that it's important that we invest in that from pre-K, which right now we have available for about 35% somewhere in there of the students who qualify, all the way up until post-secondary education, so the higher ed. And I just think that we have to fund it at all levels. We also have to realize that not everybody's going to go to JSU and get their 4-year degree. We need trades, and we need to make sure that people are fully qualified for the jobs that we're going to bring.
And so you would really work to support that as well.
Yes, ma'am.
This is, I mean, you seem so natural, very comfortable. Is this the first time that you've ever run for anything in a political?
No, ma'am. So my oldest son, who's actually an active duty soldier right now, talked me into running for office. In 2004, I ran for Jacksonville City Council because I had spoken out against the sitting city council member the year before who was a convicted child molester. And so that touched our family, and my son said, "Mom, you should run." And I was only 28 years old, so it was quite scary, but we did it. And I think that it was a great learning experience, but I also learned how important every vote is. I had, as I do now, I had a coalition of Democrats and Republicans and independents who supported me, and it's important to me to all work together. But we lost by less than 40 votes.
By less than 40 votes.
Yes,
oh
ma'am.
my God! You know, and it is a pleasure to sit here and talk with you. You're young, you're energetic, and one thing I like that you said, you were upset about something, and you just didn't sit back and complain about it and go and call up people on the phone and talk about it. You got out and you done something about it. You
Yes,
said,
ma'am.
I want to make a difference. What would you say to other young people because young women are looking at you?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, and you mentioned you lost by only less than 40 votes.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not about how you fall. It's about how you get up, right?
Yes, ma'am, it is. And so I spent the next several years devoted to working as a Department of the Army civilian, and then married a soldier. And we decided when we were going to retire, my husband wanted to go to the islands and just get away from everything. And I said, no, we have to go back to Alabama. So because I feel like I need to pay back the community that brought me up and made me who I am today.
Yes.
And so I think that it's important that young people get involved in the process. I try to tell people not to get partisan about things. You know, sometimes we have to make a decision of whether we're going to run for this party or that party. But at the end of the day, I have people supporting me from multiple parties, and I try to encourage young people, get to know the candidates, get to know their platforms, pay attention to what they do in their lives, to where they spend their time.
So important. That's so important.
Yes, ma'am.
Because a lot of times people will say, well, I'm a Democrat. That's just it. I don't care. I'm just going to go in there. I'm just going to pull the lever down. Or I'm a Republican. But I really do think that, again, when we look at this trifecta that's happening here in Alabama and has happened for many, many years, this is why, you know, when Senator Doug Jones won, Democrats were just so excited because we couldn't believe it. no one could believe that he actually won.
Right.
No one could believe that.
And Democrats were excited, but I don't, and I like Senator Jones, but I don't think that was necessarily predictive of what would happen in these races. And I don't know that it necessarily should be. I think the important thing is that we vote for the person over the party.
Yes.
But I do think it's important that we have a balance of power, and we don't have that right now, as you mentioned, Dottie. And I also think that it's important that our elected officials, that our legislature look like us. And so right now we only have 15% of the legislature is women.
I was
and
getting ready to say, where do women fall in at that?
exactly, and 52% of our population is. So I think that it's important that we just have every aspect of people represented in the legislature, and that those people who are elected then come back and are held accountable by the voters.
So we know we've got now, it's just going to be, I mean, November 6th is right around the corner.
Yes, ma'am.
I will say, people, you know, make sure you call and make sure you know where to go vote too. Because
Yes.
I mean, some polling places have changed.
Right.
Have changed. And so I would encourage people to really call and make sure you know where to go vote on November the 6th. Nikki, is there anything you would like to say before we sort of wrap up our time together here? Was there anything you'd like to really say? Because November 6th is right around the corner.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I think it just goes back, Dottie, to making sure that people vote for the person over the party. As I said, and I had told you before, we're a military family, and you know, we actually believe in the Second Amendment. We believe in the First Amendment. We believe in people's right to pray and worship God however they see fit. I believe in the sanctity of life and a consistent life ethic, and I think that it's important that people vote for the person. Pay attention to how people have spent their time and to their platforms, and not just the D or the R behind their name.
Exactly. Thank you so much for coming aboard Local
Yes,
Matters.
ma'am.
It's so good to have you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching and enjoying this. You know why? Because if it's local, it matters.